Hi, this is Pam from Wood Camper Crafts, and today I'm going to teach you how to make this classic fisherman's hat. This hat is worked using short rows, which is my absolute favorite technique for making hats. There's no decreasing, there's no bunching on the top. You get a perfectly fitted hat. So if you want to use the same yarn I'm using in this video, here is the website. You can see it's a merino wool. It's 52% merino wool and 45% acrylic. They have tons of colors to choose from, and it's listed as number 3. You can use any yarn you want of similar weight. This website, however, you can see they don't ship to Canada, but I did purchase this yarn locally. So I'm just going to start by doing a simple slip knot here. I'm going to insert my 5mm hook and I'm going to pull the yarn tight. So we're going to start by chaining 51. So yarn over and pull through, that's 1. Yarn over and pull through, that's 2. Yarn over and pull through, that's 3. You're going to chain 51 in total. I will let you work on this on your own and I will meet you at the end of the chain. So I've chained 51 and we're ready to start row 1. So there's my first chain and there's my second chain from the hook. And we're going to be inserting our hook into the second chain from the hook. And we're just going to be doing a single crochet. I have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through. So we've done 1 single crochet. And I'm going to just grab a stitch marker and I'm going to place it on that first single crochet. So you're going to need quite a few stitch markers for this video. If you don't have stitch markers, you can use bobby pins or yarn works as well. So we've got our first single crochet and we're going to be working along this chain. We are going to do 50 single crochets in total. So as you're working along this, just make sure you keep the chain nice and straight. You don't want it to twist. We're going to be doing 50 single crochets. I'll let you work on this on your own, and I will meet you at the end of row 1. So I finished row 1. I have 50 single crochets in total. I'm going to chain 1 at the end of every row and turn. So now I'm going to do a single crochet just in that first stitch there, working under both loops, yarn over and pull through. I have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. So I'm just going to pause here a moment. I'm going to grab my stitch marker and I'm going to place that stitch marker on that first single crochet. So now I'm going to continue the row, but this time I'm going to be working in my back loops only. If you look at it from the top, it's easy to see your front and back loop. So there's my front loop and my back loop. My front loop and my back loop. Once again, my front loop and my back loop. And we're going to be working under that back loop only. So you can see if I'm looking right here, there's my back loop, so just inserting my hook under my back loop only, yarn over and pull through. I have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through both loops to complete my single crochet in the back loops only. So once again, working in that back loop, we're doing a single crochet. And I'm just going to keep going here, inserting my hook in the back loop only. So I'm going to let you work on this on your own. You are going to be doing single crochets in the back loop only all the way to the end. And just stop before you get to that stitch marker and I will meet you at the end of the row. So I've finished row 2. I have 49 stitches in total. That last stitch should be a single crochet under both loops. Unfortunately, I just did it under the back loop only. That was a mistake. So you can see there's my stitch marker indicating the first stitch from the row before. We're not working in that stitch. You're going to leave the stitch marker, you're going to chain 1, and you're going to turn. So once you turn here, you can see the first stitch in the row. I'm going to skip that stitch and we're working in the second stitch in the row, doing a single crochet, working under both loops. So insert your hook, yarn over and pull through. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. So we have our first single crochet in row 3. We're going to put a stitch marker on it, and then we're going to continue working this row. We're working single crochets in the back loop only. So identify your back loop there. I'm going to insert my hook, and I'm just doing single crochets all the way along. So you can keep doing this on your own. You're doing single crochets in the back loop only. And I will meet you at the end of the row just before the stitch marker. So I've almost finished row 3. I've just stopped here to show you the last stitch. So we've got our stitch marker there. We are just going to take off our stitch marker, and this time we are working in the last stitch. We're going to be doing a single crochet in that last stitch, working under both loops. And once we've completed row 3, we will have 48 stitches in total. So at the end of every row, we're going to chain 1 and we are going to turn. So in this row, we are working in the first stitch. We're going to be doing a single crochet working under both loops. So just yarn over and pull through. And we are going to, once again, put a stitch marker on our first stitch in the row. So there we go. We have our stitch marker there indicating the first stitch in our row. So we're going to continue along. We are working under the back loops only, doing single crochets. And you can do this on your own. Once again, I will meet you at the end of the row just before we complete the last stitch, just so I can show you how to do it. So you keep working on this and I'll see you at the end of the row. So I finished the last stitch in the row. We have 47 stitches in total. Once again, I meant to do a single crochet, but I just did it under the back loop. You can see that stitch marker indicating what would be the last stitch in the row if we were going to work in it, but we're going to skip that one. We are going to chain 1 and turn. So once again, we are going to skip that first stitch in the row, which is right there, and we're going to be doing a single crochet in the next stitch. So insert your hook. We're just going to be doing a single crochet here. And then once again, we're going to put a stitch marker on the first stitch in the row. These stitch markers will be really important later on. You'll see why we need all of these stitch markers. So there we go. We have a stitch marker on the first stitch in our row. And then we are going to just be doing single crochets, working in that back loop only. We're doing them all the way along. You can work on these on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row just before the stitch marker. So I've almost finished row 5. When I finish row 5, I'll have 46 stitches in total. You can see the stitch marker there indicating the last stitch that I'm going to be working in. And we're doing a single crochet in that last stitch, working under both loops. So just yarn over and pull through. You have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through both loops. So I've completed my last stitch. I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So in this row here, we do not want to skip the first stitch. We're working in that one, doing a single crochet, working under both loops. So I've got my first single crochet in the row, and I'm going to grab a stitch marker. And I'm just going to place that stitch marker on the first single crochet in row 6. So now we're ready to work row 6. We're going to be doing single crochets, working in the back loop only. So I'm going to let you work on this on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row just before the stitch marker. So I'm just about to complete row 6. Once we finish this row, we'll have 45 stitches in total. So I've got one more stitch to complete the row, and I'm just doing a single crochet working under both loops. I did it correctly this time. So yarn over and pull through, you have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through both loops. So there's the last stitch in the row, which is indicated by the stitch marker. We are going to skip that stitch. We're just going to chain 1 and we are going to turn. So we're starting row 7 and we are going to skip that first stitch. So there's the first stitch. We're going to skip that and we're doing a single crochet working under both loops in the second stitch. So I'm just going to do a single crochet here, and then I'm going to just grab my stitch marker and put my stitch marker on that first single crochet in the row. So this is what the short rows start to look like. So we're just going to keep going there, and we're going to be doing single crochets working under that back loop only. So you can work on this on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row right before that stitch marker. So I'm at the end of row 7. Once we finish this, we'll have 44 stitches in total. So I'm just going to take off that stitch marker, and we're going to do our final single crochet in the row, working under both loops. So yarn over and pull through, and just complete that single crochet. So I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. And now we're starting row 8. We're going to be working in that first stitch, working under both loops, and we're just doing a single crochet. So I'm just going to grab a stitch marker here and put it on my first single crochet in the row. So in the rest of the row, we are just going to be doing single crochets working under the back loop only. So you can work on this row on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row just before that final stitch marker. So I'm at the end of row 8. Once we finish this row, we'll have 43 stitches in total. So I'm just going to do the final stitch in the row, which is a single crochet working under both loops. So I'm just doing a single crochet here, and you can see that stitch marker indicates the final stitch that we're not working in. We're going to skip that stitch, and we're just going to chain 1 and turn. So we're starting row 9, and you can see that's the first stitch in our row that we're going to skip. We're going to be doing a single crochet working under both loops in the second stitch. So I'm just doing my single crochet here. Then I'm going to grab my stitch marker and put it on that first single crochet in the row. And now that I've got it on there, we're going to continue on, and I'm going to be doing single crochets, just working under that back loop only. So you can do this on your own, and I'll meet you at the end of the row just before that final stitch marker. We're at the end of row 9, and once we finish this row, we'll have 42 stitches in total. There's my stitch marker indicating the last stitch, so I'll take that off. And we're going to be doing a single crochet in that last stitch, working under both loops. So I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So we're starting row 10. We are working in the first stitch. We are doing a single crochet. So I'm just going to do my single crochet here. And now that I've finished that, we are going to grab a stitch marker and put it on that first single crochet in the row. So I'm going to be continuing on now. We're going to be doing single crochets working in the back loop only. We're going to do those all the way along. You can work on this on your own, and I'll meet you at the end of the row just before the stitch marker. So I'm at the end of row 10. Once we finish this row, we'll have 41 stitches in total. So I'm working in this last stitch here, doing a single crochet working under both loops. So this is going to be the final stitch in our row. You can see that stitch marker would be the last stitch, but we're going to skip that. And I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So we're starting row 11. This is our first stitch, which we're going to skip. So we're working in the second stitch here, doing a single crochet, working under both loops. So I'm just going to do my single crochet here, and then I'm going to grab a stitch marker. And I'm going to place my stitch marker on that first single crochet in the row. So we're going to continue on doing a row of single crochets working under that back loop only. And I'll let you work on this on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row before that last stitch marker. I'm at the end of the row just before that last stitch marker. So I'm going to work in that last stitch. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and I'm doing a single crochet in the last stitch, working under both loops. So I'm just going to chain 1 here and turn. And we're starting row 12 now. So I'm going to do a single crochet in the very first stitch, working under both loops. So we have our single crochet, and I'm just going to grab a stitch marker and put it on that first stitch there. And I'm going to continue working this row. We're doing single crochets working in the back loop only. And I will let you work on this on your own. And I will meet you at the end of the row before the stitch marker. I'm almost finished row 12. I just have that last stitch to do. And I'm going to be doing a single crochet working under both loops. So I'm finished this row, and I've got 39 stitches in total. There's my stitch marker, which would be my last stitch, but we're going to skip that. So this is what our short rows are starting to look like. So I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So we're starting row 13. There's the first stitch in the row, which we are going to skip. I'm doing a single crochet in the next stitch, working under both loops. And I'm just going to grab a stitch marker and put it on that first single crochet in the row. So once again, we are doing single crochets, working under the back loop only. And I'll let you work on this on your own, and I'll meet you at the end of the row just before the stitch marker. So I'm at the end of the row, and we just have one more stitch. So we're going to take off our stitch marker here and work in our final stitch in the row. We're doing a single crochet working under both loops. So once I finish this row, I will have 38 stitches in total. So I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So now we're ready to start row 14. We're doing a single crochet working in the first stitch, and we're working under both loops. So I have my single crochet here, and we're just going to pause a moment, grab that stitch marker, and we're going to put the stitch marker on the first single crochet in our row. So now that I've got that stitch marker on there, I'm just going to continue. So we're doing single crochets working under the back loop only, and I'll let you work on that on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row before the stitch marker. So I'm at the end of the row here. I just have one final stitch in the row, and I'm doing a single crochet working under both loops. So that stitch marker shows the final stitch in the row, which we're skipping. We're going to chain 1 and turn. So we're starting row 15. You can see that's the first stitch in the row. We're going to skip that, and we're going to do a single crochet in the next stitch, working under both loops. We're going to pause, we're going to grab our stitch marker, and we're going to put the stitch marker on that first single crochet in the row. Now that I have my stitch marker on there, we're going to continue the row. We are doing single crochets working under that back loop only. And we're going to do that all the way along, and I will meet you at the end of the row just before the stitch marker. So I'm at the end of the row. I have one stitch to complete the row. I'm going to be doing a single crochet, so I need to take out that stitch marker, and we're going to insert our hook under both loops and just doing a single crochet to complete the row. So I'm just going to chain one and turn. So we're starting row 16, and we're going to be doing a single crochet working under both loops in that first stitch there. I'm just going to pause a minute, grab my stitch marker, and I'm going to place my stitch marker on that first single crochet in the row. There we go. Now I have my stitch marker. I'm going to continue working the row. I'm going to be doing single crochets working in the back loop only. When we complete row 16, we will have 50 stitches in total. You may remember that in row 1 we had 50 stitches. So we're going to get 50 stitches by working in those short rows. So I'll let you continue working on this, doing single crochets working in the back loop only. And you can just stop before that final stitch marker. So I'll meet you there, and I will show you how to work your short rows. So here's the last stitch before our stitch marker. Normally we'd work under both loops, but because it's not the last stitch in our row this time, I'm going to just be working under that back loop. So now I'm going to start working these short rows. So I'm just going to show you here. Here are our short rows. We have the stitch marker that we put on the first stitch in every row. And then in between the stitch marker here, you can see it's almost like there's two loops there, and we're going to be working under both those loops. So there's the first one and there's the second one. So that's the placement of your hook. So we're going to be placing stitches where the stitch markers are, and then we're going to be placing another stitch in between the two stitch markers just under those two loops. So in the short row, we're going to be working 15 single crochets in total, working under two loops. So we're going to be working in the stitch marker stitches and then in between them. So there's one, there's two stitches, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we're doing 15 single crochets working in those short rows. So we're ready to start our short rows now. We're going to take that stitch marker off that first stitch. And it's a little hard to get off there. And we're going to be doing a single crochet in that stitch, working under both loops. So there's our first single crochet. And then we're working in between those two stitch markers. We're working under those two loops, just like I showed you there. And we're doing another single crochet. So we have 2 single crochets now. So then we're going to take our stitch marker off. And this is going to be our third single crochet working under both loops. And then we're working that stitch in between the 2 stitch markers, working under both loops. Might have to give it a helping hand there. So we now have 4 single crochets. Take off that stitch marker. And we're working under both loops. So we have 5 single crochets. Remember, we're doing 15 in total. So there's the stitch in between the 2 stitch markers, working under both loops. And we have 6 single crochets. Let's take that stitch marker off. It's not that easy to get these things off. And we're doing a single crochet working under both loops. So that's 7, working in between the 2 stitch markers under both loops. And that's 8. And we're going to take off the next stitch marker. They get caught on my yarn here, so I'm not making it look very easy. So working under both loops. And that's 9. And then working in between the 2 stitch markers under both loops. And that's 10. Taking off that stitch marker. Working a single crochet under both loops. 11. Working in between the stitch markers. That's 12. Whoops. 12. Taking off that stitch marker. Doing a single crochet. That's 13. We've got 2 more to go. Working in between the 2 stitch markers under both loops. I'm not making it look easy, sorry. Having trouble with the yarn here. So that's 14. And our final stitch in the row. We're taking off our stitch marker. We're doing a single crochet working under both loops. And that's 15 single crochets in the short row. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like here when we've finished working our short row. We've now completed row 16 and we have 50 stitches in total, which is the same number of stitches that we started with. So we're going to start by chaining 1 and turning. So we're going to be working on row 17 and we're going to start by doing a single crochet in the first stitch, working under both loops. And I'm just going to stop here, grab a stitch marker, and place it on that first single crochet in the row. So in the rest of the row, we are doing single crochets working under the back loop only until we get to that final stitch in the row, which will be a single crochet under both loops. So I'll let you work on this on your own. You're going to be doing single crochets, all the way along, working in the back loops. And I will meet you at the end of the row, just before that final stitch marker. So I'm at the end of the row, just before the final stitch marker. So I'm going to remove that stitch marker, and I'm going to do a single crochet working under both loops. So I've completed one section and this is what it looks like. So you can work on the rest of the hat on your own. All you're doing is repeating rows 2 to 17. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like after I finished the next section. So I've done 2 sections here. And my plan was to do this 5 times in total, but I actually ran out of yarn just before I finished the 5th section. So what I'm going to show you is that you can stop the hat anywhere you want. You can measure it around your head and see how big you need to make it, and you don't need to complete an entire section. If you did finish off your hat by completing an entire section, you can just fast forward this next part, and at the end I will show you how to join the hat together. So I'm almost done my hat here, and as I said before, I ran out of yarn, so I'm not going to finish that final section. I'm just going to end it early. You can end it at any point, but your second last row will be a modification of row 16, and your final row will always be row 17. So this is my second last row. I just did 43 stitches here, and then in my short rows to make up 50, you can see I have 7 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's still similar to row 16. I just have fewer stitches in my short row, but I still have 50 stitches in total. So I'm going to work the next 7 stitches in my short rows, working single crochets in the same stitch as the stitch marker, and then also inserting a single crochet in between the stitch markers. Once I finish this, I will have 50 stitches in total, and I will have completed my second last row. And then the final stitch in a row is 50. So as you can see, you can end your hat before you finish a complete section. You just have to do a modification of row 16. You'll still have 50 stitches in that row. You'll just have fewer stitches in the short row. So you can see I'm all done here, and that's what it looks like. So I just need to do my final row now, which is going to be row 17. So I'm at the end of row 17. I just have one more stitch in the row, so I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and I'm going to do a single crochet in that last stitch. So I'm done my hat here. I'm not going to chain one at the end. I'm ready to put it all together. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to fold my hat in half, and I'm going to line up that final row with my original chain. So just line it up here. I have a whole bunch of stitch markers that I've grabbed, and I'm going to use these stitch markers to hold my work in place. So I have it all lined up here, and I've got my stitch markers to hold my work in place while I join my hat together with a slip stitch. So I'm going to take off this first stitch marker, and you can see that my hook is behind, so it might be a little bit of work to get your first slip stitch going. So I'm going to insert my hook, and you're inserting your hook under your original chain, which is just one loop, and then you're inserting it under both loops in your final row. So we're going to be doing 50 slip stitches in total since we have 50 stitches in our final row. So I've just completed my first one here, so I'm going to insert my hook under that loop in my original chain, and then I'm going under both loops in my final row. So you're doing 50 slip stitches in total. I'll let you work on this on your own, and I will meet you at the end when you finish joining your hat. So I finished joining my hat, and this is what it looks like. So at the end here, I've just got my loop, so I'm going to close off my hat by just pulling the string through and tightening it. So we're all done here. Our final step is going to be weaving in our 2 ends. So I just have this big needle here that I use, and I usually weave in my ends just using a zigzag pattern. So I'll go under 4 or 5 stitches in one direction. So just work my needle under a few stitches, just going in one direction. You don't need to go through that many, and then I'm just going to pull it right through. And then I do a zigzag pattern. So I go back working through 4 or 5 stitches in the other direction. Pull that through, and I can grab some scissors and cut my end, and I'm all done. I just have one more end to weave in, which you can do on your own. And I'm finished my hat. So I'm going to turn it right side out, and this is what it looks like when it's all done. And then you can just fold up the end there. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I really enjoyed making this hat pattern for you guys. So if you did like it, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to my channel.